Thank you very much for being here. Um, my name is Devlin. I'm a master's student in political studies at the University of Manitoba. I'm a research assistant with the Geopolitical Economy Research Group, a writer, a co-organizer for this event, and I'll be moderating today's event. So I'm moderating out of Winnipeg, which is on Treaty 1 territory, the stolen land of the Cree, Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Anishinaabe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. While this territory is covered by a treaty, it's worth remembering that this land was not legitimately ceded to Canada as an exclusive sovereign. Canada has cynically used treaties as one part of a set of strategies to impose exclusive sovereignty over Indigenous lands. Land theft, the denial of Indigenous self-determination, and the devastating consequences are ongoing in Manitoba and beyond, and it's incumbent on all progressives, anti-imperialists, and those who support social justice to support Indigenous resurgence, struggles for self-determination, and sovereignty. So the subject of today's webinar has gripped Canada. It gripped Canada through the month of February. Yet through all the news coverage, op-eds, and think pieces, a clear, coherent understanding of the Freedom Convoy has been pretty hard to come by. Many in the Liberal Party and its base of support have opportunistically used the very real visibility of hate symbols and the prominent of far-right activists to completely write off the movement as a movement of hateful deplorables. And in so doing, they evade all accountability for their role in creating the conditions that allowed the convoy to emerge. The conservative parties at the federal and provincial levels have likewise tried to use the convoy, in particular as a wedge against the Liberals. While initially supporting the convoy, with many MPs posing for photos with them, the party quickly walked back their endorsements when the movement became more disruptive than they were willing to be seen supporting. Now, despite these denunciations of the movement, which eventually came from both parties, the Liberals and Conservatives bear primary responsibility for creating the conditions that have allowed the convoy to emerge. Liberal and Conservative governments have failed to suppress and often even control the virus. Decades of neoliberal cuts to public services has left Canada's healthcare system woefully unprepared for this pandemic. Despite the lofty rhetoric about how we're all in this together, many in Canada have experienced significant hardship and some continuously suffer more than others. As government gestures towards an eventual end to the pandemic fail to materialize, confusion, frustration, and anger abound. The longer the pandemic goes on, the fewer social supports are available, and working classes are now being forced to return to work as provincial governments abdicate basic responsibilities to ensure the protection of public health. And it's significant that this shift from provincial governments comes in the wake of the pandemic, or in the wake of the convoy, sorry. While it seems likely that the convoy was not so much the cause of this shift from provincial governments towards completely abdicating responsibility, it seems that the convoy has allowed, especially conservative provincial governments, to pursue policies that they already wanted. And this can only be emboldening for this movement. While the more radical goals of dethroning the government and forming a committee with the Canada Unity, the Senate, and the Governor General, while such lofty goals were bound to fail, the basic demand that pandemic restrictions be lifted is being granted. So this movement is a reflection of the conditions created by Liberal governments, and the movement has gone beyond what Conservatives are prepared to support. The movement has seized on legitimate anger against the government responses. And their ability to do so reflects the absence of a left alternative. The movement that has seized on this anger so far has not seized on it to call for more robust public health measures, safer working conditions, but quite the opposite. They've seized on it to call for individualizing calls to end public mandates and return to business as usual. And in this sense, their demands mirror much more closely the Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses than it does, say, labor unions or other progressive organizations. So the Freedom Convoy and the Trudeau government's invocation of the Emergency Act in all these senses have raised fundamental questions about Canada as a political unit. What are the social character and the goals of the Freedom Convoy? How exactly is it connected to the COVID crisis? What explains the response of various Canadian governments, and not to mention law enforcement across Canadian cities? What does all this bode for Canada's future? How will the left respond? With the decades-long recession having deepened during the COVID crisis, there's also much political confusion about whether the convoy is working class, whether it's a protest movement, whether the Emergencies Act is wrong, or whether it was necessary to support it. There's considerable confusion about why it took Canadian authorities so long to act. There are questions around the US connection to the convoy. So in the wake of all this confusion, we, the International Manifesto Group, present a series of panels on this critically important subject. Panel 1 is co-organized by the International Manifesto Group as well as the Society for Socialist Studies, and it will provide an overview focusing on the movement, its historical origins from critical left, Indigenous, and Quebec perspectives.
I'm Michael Hudson. I'm appearing here for the International Manifesto Group. If you like this video and ones like it, please subscribe. For more information, go to the address on the screen.